And my sermon is about remembering. So let me get back to the beginning. Remember, 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 remember. Actually, I've already heard it 4 times during this service. So you folks said it. Do you remember what you're going to remember? What? Anyone? What are we going to remember? We'll remember the promises of God. Absolutely. That's one of them. We will remember the people who have left us. That's part of our purpose today. And that's the one I said, right? What else are we remembering? That we are on Duwamish land, unceded land. Remember, remember, remember. And our text invites us as well to remember. Remember what God has done. This last week, we've actually been through several celebrations around remembering. Any of you go trick-or-treating this week? Any of you? There we go. There we go. There we go. Did you dress up in some costumes? Halloween is the eve before Hallow Day or All Saints Day, which comes just before All Souls Day. And also this week, many celebrated La Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. All of this week, we have been invited to remember. In fact, in many Christian communities this Sunday, we are celebrating a service of memory and hope, a service when we remember those who have shaped our lives, those who've influenced those who've come before us. The first Sunday in November is often celebrated as All Saints Day. In the New Testament, the book of Hebrews suggests we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. And if you've read the book of Hebrews, you've heard that roll call of the saints, all the folks who are cheering us on, all the stories we remember, all the preciousness we hold on to. The imagery that's used is the imagery of a race. We are running the race. That's our call. And those who came before us ran the race before us. Now they're in the cheering section, cheering us on. My sister can tell you a story about what it means to be cheered on in a race. We were in a triathlon on Whidbey Island, and my sister's here today. I'll just say for those on Zoom, so I'm looking right at her as I tell this story. We were in a triathlon on Whidbey Island, and all of the runners were youngsters, except my sister and me and a few of others of us. And my sister was the final competitor on the course. In fact, the award ceremony had already begun, and all the folks who had finished were sitting up on the hill when the announcer stopped everything and said, "Here comes the final participant. Let's cheer her on." She says to me that crowd turning to cheer her on was one of her more profound and memorable racing moments. Here we all stopped just to say thank you for being in the race and to encourage that last finisher. So let me just say for a minute, even if you feel like in this race you are way behind, it's okay. There's a cloud of witnesses cheering you on. Even if you think maybe you are in last place, that's okay, because we are cheering you on. And beyond us, cloud of witnesses. Maybe you've felt that in your own life. Maybe things that have kept you going have been those moments of remembering the people who have given you an inheritance, who have invested in your life. I'll just pause for a minute because sometimes we just go too fast. Let you call to mind, to your heart, a few of those folks who are your cloud of witnesses. This is a week when we're invited to remember. This is a season of remembering. But with that said, I also want to note that we live in a forgetful world. And I am not just talking about the common forgetfulness of where did I put my keys? Or what did I come into this room for? Or what time is that meeting on Friday? That's not the kind of forgetfulness I'm talking about. And I'm not even talking about the forgetfulness that comes with disease. I'm not talking about that kind of forgetfulness. I'm talking about a culture of forgetfulness. I'm talking about the ways we have created a culture of forgetting, a culture that asks us to not remember whose land we're on or how we got here. A culture that asks us not to remember all of the ways racism has been folded into our privilege. If you wonder how real that is, just look at the battles that are going on right now about remembering. In our culture of forgetting, here's what we are encouraged to remember. Remember the places you must take vengeance. And remember the stories and the lies we told you. Don't remember the harm we've done. Don't even remember the commitments you made 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago to make a difference in the world. We go from news item to news item. Sure, we are convicted and will make a difference. You know, I'll just wade on in here. 6 months ago, we called this month Rovember because folks were going to turn out to make a statement about people's sovereignty over their own bodies, right? But do we remember? Or have we actually been encouraged to forget? We have created a culture of forgetting. If you remember that book, Fahrenheit 451, very appropriate these days. It's the story of burning books. And why do we burn those books? Because we are creating a culture of forgetting. Actually, the main character notes that he is expected to forget, even forget the people who've been a part of your life. In the book, Ray Bradbury says, why bother with a funeral? 10 minutes after they're gone, just forget them. Live in the now. In the book, a culture is created so that people forget. And boy, haven't we created that culture, because a culture of forgetting is a culture of oppression. And when we are encouraged to forget, we are encouraged to join in that oppression, especially those who benefit from forgetting, right? If we forget, we won't change. In that kind of culture, I am going to suggest that remembering can be a revolutionary act. Just remembering. Remembering who we are. Remembering how we got here. remembering those who have shaped us, remembering the commitments we've made. And I'm talking about honest remembering. I'm talking about honest remembering. I'm not talking about just, forgetting all the hard stuff and going with the good stuff. I'm talking about just sitting in that remembering. So now with this long detour, let me take you right back to our text. Because in our text, we are not the only ones called on to remember. In our text, isn't it interesting? God remembers as well. And what does God remember? God remembers God's love of the people. God will not forget you. And while God makes provision for that last place you might feel in this race, what God remembers, look at the text. God remembers God's loving kindness. God remembers God's compassion. The sovereign one remembers creation. And one of our convictions as a community of faith is that the sovereign one cares. I would suggest that the witnesses that surround us and a God who remembers can give us the courage to remember as well. Because I know remembering is not easy. Not only are we encouraged to forget, but remembering sometimes can be hard. But it's those honest memories that will move us forward. Everything else just hold us back. I promise you. Go ahead and remember, even if the memory is tough, even if there is darkness. And I will tell you, the God who remembers will be right there with us, encouraging us on. I will tell you, when you remember the hard stuff, you'll remember the good stuff too. And you will defy the culture of forgetting because you will remember who you are and who you are created to be. If you have seen the movie or the play, The Lion King, you've seen this story, right? So in that movie, the critical moment in Simba's life, Simba, who has been running pretty much all his life from loss, the critical moment is the moment he's invited to remember. Can you call to mind that scene? Simba. He envisions his father, that great cloud, that great witness, there in the heavens, calling to him, Simba, remember who you are. Remember who you are. Oh, community, remember who you are. You are beloved children of God. You are the one God remembers. So take courage. The reason your memories can be faced, to quote Walter Brueggemann, I've preached here long enough, two other sermons. I've always quoted Walter Brueggemann, so let's bring him in again. He's an Old Testament theologian. He's one of my favorite guys. He's my theological hero. The reason memories can be faced and lived in is that even in the darkest moments, there is one there with us. This one, this God, has promised to be in the darkness with us. And so we find the darkness strangely transformed. Listen to this. Not by the power of easy light, easy memory, but by the power of relentless solidarity. That cloud of witnesses, the relentless solidarity of those who came before us, the relentless solidarity of community, the relentless solidarity of God. I'll say one more thing. Sometimes I think most good sermons, at least the ones I've heard, are simply reminders of things we already know. So think about it. I haven't told you anything new. I've just invited you to remember. And the promise of the psalm is, in that remembering, we will pass on an inheritance. May that inheritance be a more just world. As that great cloud of witnesses, all the saints remind us, and as they encourage us on. Amen.